Business objectives. Now, this is a topic from section 1, business sense environment, and we'll be going through the list of goals or objectives that are pursued by business organizations depending on the stage in the product life cycle and the other factors, also their financial position, etc. And we'll also try to shed some light on highly relevant theory here, the MBO theory, the management by objectives theory by Peter Drucker. But first of all, we should remember that business organizations, they pursue a variety of objectives, right? And first of all, it will depend on, like I said, numerous factors like the financial position and whether it's a new business or not, the stage in the product life cycle, etc. But the first one is survival. The first business objective to be discussed here is survival. So for any new business, for any newly established business, for any small business, survival has to be the first objective, right? We understand that profit maximization is the ultimate goal for all businesses, but initially when you establish a business, initially you have to be a little cautious, right? And because you see there's a lot of competition, and it is worth mentioning, I think this was underlined sometime back in another lecture also, I think it was product life cycle, yes, that 50% of all new businesses, they collapse within 1 year. 50% of all new businesses, they just vanish within a year's time. That goes on to show that the introductory stage is the most critical stage in the product life cycle. It's the most critical stage in the product life cycle. So keeping this in view, because of all the teething problems that businesses face at this stage when they're new, when they're struggling, or the teething problems, startup problems, it is important that initially survival should be the main objective. Just try to stay there for some time. You should not be too aggressive initially. Don't try to maximize profit straight away. Just try to find a foothold in the market first. Survival. If you somehow survive through that critical, turbulent introductory stage, then afterwards, things become relatively easier for businesses. So initially, they should try to survive first, and then try and pursue other objectives, right? And how can you enhance your the probability of surviving during the initial introductory stage? Usually, companies, they use penetration pricing for this purpose. Charge a lower price. That will of course attract the price conscious customers. This almost always works, especially in case of FMCGs, fast moving consumer goods. Or use effective advertising, above the line, below the line promotion, so on and so forth. So, but the first objective to be discussed here is survival. Then there could be growth or sales revenue maximization also. Once a business has managed to survive through that critical introductory stage, then it can always try to achieve growth. Growth basically suggests that the customers, the target audience, they have accepted the product, and now of course that foothold that they were looking for, they found that foothold in the market, and now they're getting a good positive response from the customers. So now of course they can be a little more aggressive. They can try and enjoy economies of scale, try to grow in size, maximize sales. In fact, there are certain social scientists like William Baumol, they focus on sales revenue maximization only. In fact, they in a way they oversimplify things, and they say if you maximize sales, everything else will be achieved automatically. But of course, sales revenue maximization is another important objective. So try to overcome competition, increase your market share, grow. That could be another objective. And then, of course, needless to say, the ultimate objective to be pursued and hopefully achieved by any business organization is profit maximization. A business activity is the one, this was our first definition. This is like the foundation, upon which the entire structure of business stands. Profit maximization, the business activity, an activity that leads to an output in the shape of goods and services with the ultimate objective of maximizing profit. profit maximization has to be the ultimate objective. This is, the gauge that ultimately measures the success of a business. A business organization has to be a profit-seeking organization, right? So, trying to maximize profit. This has to be the ultimate goal. And how do you maximize profit? Profit is revenue minus cost. So just try to widen the gap between revenue and cost, and you will maximize profit. The higher the revenue and the lower the cost, that's the key to success. That's the key to profit maximization. A simple formula: revenue minus cost. So of course, survival and growth and sales and profit maximization, yes, very, very important objectives. But keeping in mind, how things have evolved in the last few years or decades, it is worth mentioning that CSR must also be added to this list of objectives. CSR, corporate social responsibility. By now, we've all understood how important it is for a business to fulfill its CSR, how important it is for a business to fulfill its, corporate responsibility or corporate social responsibility. How important it is for a business to act in an ethically responsible way. All those concepts, triple bottom line, etc. They clearly highlight the fact that a successful business nowadays is a business that fulfills its CSR, its responsibility towards the society. It shouldn't pollute the environment, and it should contribute towards some charitable cause, or they should try and do something for the environment, or they should discourage child labor. So whatever we have learned, previously when we were doing CSR, that too was a part of Business and Environment Section 1. That also should be discussed here. It should be on the list of objectives. That fulfilling its social responsibility for any business organization, that is also an important business objective. Because when you act in an ethically responsible manner, when you fulfill your CSR, basically it adds to your goodwill, your credibility, which in turn it will lead to higher sales and of course profit maximization ultimately. So yes, CSR is something that should also be discussed here as a business objective. And lastly, the public sector companies, public corporations, public sector companies, nowadays they are in direct competition with against these the private sector companies. As we all know, public sector companies, they are owned and controlled by the state, and profit maximization is a secondary objective, and they're supposed to provide the masses with certain facilities. But nowadays, the way things have changed, these public sector organizations also try to, compete with these the private sector companies by providing services, all kinds of services to the masses. So for them, providing services is the main objective, and as they do that, they will try to maximize profit also, make or generate profit also. But profit will be the secondary motive. You will never write that they are not interested in making profit. That will be technically incorrect. A public sector organization is interested in making profit, but it is a secondary motive. First of all, they have to provide services, whether it's transportation or electricity or transportation, whatever, to the masses at subsidized rates. But as they do that, they'll try and make profit also. Providing services is the main objective. So these mainly are the objective that businesses try to pursue. And as I mentioned in the beginning, there's a highly relevant theory here by Peter Drucker's MBO theory, management by objectives. So it is advisable that when you're attempting a question on business objectives, just to authenticate the answer, you can always refer to Peter Drucker's MBO as well. So basically in MBO, Peter Drucker tries to underline, all those factors that should be taken into consideration by companies in order to have an objective-oriented approach, right? If a business organization wishes to achieve long-term success, it should try and streamline all its activities, organize all its activities, and have a well-planned approach. This is basically what MBO focuses on. That business organizations, they should try to plan everything properly. There should not be any, haphazard moves or haphazard movements. This is, the point they're trying to put across. Okay, there are three points to be mentioned here in MBO. Number one, Drucker says that all business objectives, they must be defined in quantitative terms. all business objectives should be defined quantitatively. They should be defined in quantitative terms, which simply means that when you assign a task to a worker, it should be defined in figures, in numeric terms, in numbers, not in a vague manner. I mean, a simple example will clarify. Let's suppose there's a manager. He asks his workers, he instructs them that I want you to produce a large number of units, or I expect, high performance from you, or he just assigns a task to them, or he sets an objective that I expect you to perform well. Now, performing well is not a quantitative goal. It is vague. It's unclear. I mean, good performance to the manager might mean producing 100 units a day. Good performance to a particular worker might mean producing 75 units a day. So, good performance or performing well, it's not a quantitative goal. It is vague. A quantitative goal would be when it is defined in numeric terms. If the manager tells his workers that I want you to produce 150 units by the 30th of this month, this is a clear-cut quantitative goal with no element of ambiguity or confusion. When you give figures, that's a quantitative goal. So producing 150 units by the 30th of December, this is a clear-cut quantitative goal with absolutely no element of, doubt or ambiguity there or confusion there. Right? So that's very, very important, because as I've been mentioning, you should always try to justify your statements, always give reasons for your statements, always find the answer to why. We've been discussing this. So what's the reason? What's the justification? Obviously, when the goals are quantitative, evaluation becomes easier. You know exactly, that whether he has met a target or not, or is he lagging behind? If yes, by how much? That I asked him to produce 100, he has produced 85, so another 15 to go, another 15% to go. So evaluating the performance of your workers, your organization, it becomes easier for managers, and for the workers themselves also. It becomes easier for them to keep a check on their own performance. Right? So goals, this must always be quantitatively defined. That's number one. That's the first component of MBO. Number two would be, Drucker says that all business objectives, they should be arranged in a certain hierarchy, and there has to be a high degree of consistency. Hierarchy and consistency. This is what he suggests, Drucker, that always place your objectives or your tasks in a certain order of importance, in a hierarchy, so that everything is done systematically and there's no confusion, there are no conflicts left. And there has to be consistency. There has to be a sense of continuity. One objective should support or complement the other objective. One department should complement the other department. There shouldn't be any clashes or conflicts between people, managers, departments, objectives. So basically, it highlights the importance of having a systematic approach. Everything should be done in a well-streamlined, well-coordinated way. So place them in a certain hierarchy and make sure there's consistency. Everyone, all the departments, they should make a combined effort to take the company forward. Right? Consistency and hierarchy. And the last one is, which is also very, very important, that business objectives, they must be challenging. A business objective must be challenging, but at the same time, realistic also. Challenging and realistic. Very, very important, because you see, when you set a goal, set an objective, or when you assign a task to someone, it has to be a challenging one. It should not be a piece of cake for him. That worker, that employee must understand that if I, wish to achieve this, I will have to make a serious effort. A wholehearted attempt is needed. A half-hearted attempt won't lead me to success. So business objectives, they must always be challenging. It has to be an uphill task, so that the worker or the employee that the task was assigned to, he uses all his potential and his skills to achieve that objective. As a result of this, the performance level that is raised. It's good for his own career growth also. He learns more, good for the organization. Productivity will increase. Don't make it too simple for the workers. Make them, understand that, yes, It is achievable, but you will achieve it only if you give it your best shot, you give it your 100%. Then as a result of this, you will achieve success. And as I just mentioned, as a result of this approach, there will be a definite improvement in productivity, good for the individual. In a way, it's a motivation tool also, because when he achieves success, after having made a serious effort, he will enjoy it more, he'll be motivated to work, and he would know how good he actually is. Or if there are any weak areas, he'll be able to identify those also. So yes, it is important, the goals are challenging. But at the same time, they should be realistic also. Challenging and realistic at the same time. Good managers, they know how to strike a balance between these two. Yes, it should be difficult to achieve, but it should not be impossible to accomplish. Yeah, because you see, by assigning a difficult task, yes, you will make him work, but the worker should know, he should be convinced that yes, if I make a serious effort, I will achieve success for sure. He should never feel that, despite all my hard work, that success, that goal is still out of my reach. He should never feel that, because in that case, instead of motivating the workers, you will start demotivating them. That despite all that hard work, the outcome still, it won't be desirable. Yes, experienced managers, they know how to strike a balance. They know how to assign challenging tasks to their workers, but they also know, how to make those tasks realistic, and they have to be within the reach of their workers. This should be difficult to achieve, not impossible to achieve. Yeah, so this balance is extremely important. So basically, MBO is a combination of these three. Very, very useful theory, an effective management approach also. Their goals, they should be defined numerically, clearly in numbers. They should be placed in a certain hierarchy systematically, and they should be consistent. And thirdly, they should be challenging and realistic at the same time. But like any other concept, a bit of evaluation is needed. MBO obviously is a very useful technique, but you must try and come up with or identify limitations or the risk factor. For instance, in MBO, workers are known for this. Workers, they often show resistance to MBO. This is like a drawback or a limitation, because as you must have observed, that MBO demands that everyone has to work in a disciplined fashion. And we all know that discipline is good, but we also know that, nobody wants to be disciplined generally. Yeah. So as a result of this, workers sometimes, because they have to adhere to certain rules and regulations, there's a code of discipline that is, that is in place. So workers sometimes they show resistance to this, and then the managers, they have to adopt some strategy to convince them to work in accordance with the given rules and regulations, motivate them. So resistance from the workers, and there are also allegations that sometimes it proves to be somewhat inflexible. Same revolves around the same point, inflexible, because a set pattern, a code of conduct has to be followed. So rules and regulations have to be followed. So sometimes there is a bit of inflexibility, and it might prove to be somewhat time consuming also, at least initially, because you have to learn all those skills, and you have to learn how to perform a certain task. Yes, but generally MBO is quite an effective theory, and it is strongly recommended that you add it to your answer if there's an essay type question on objectives, business objectives. Right? So this was all you needed to know regarding business objectives, and of course MBO, Management by Objectives Theory with Peter Drucker.